All right, a good Sunday to you. Thanks for finding us here at Fox 26. I'm meteorologist John Dawson. You know the drill. Every day, a little bit after 4 p.m. That's every day of hurricane season. A little bit after 4 p.m. Central Time, we're here with our in-depth tropical update. And normally we're focusing on the Atlantic Basin. Sometimes when things are a little quiet, we'll peek over and talk about the Pacific just a little bit. But today is one of those days where there are several things to talk about in the Atlantic Basin. So that's certainly going to be our focus. And let me just sort of start by pointing out that we've got three different blobs from the National Hurricane Center, and they're different colors. Well, actually, if you look at the Pacific, there's even another one going on over there. But as I said, we're going to put the Pacific aside for just a moment. And speaking of putting things aside, this area we're also going to kind of set aside. It's very low chances that anything would develop, and we're not really looking for that to happen anytime soon. But this is a spot just off the coast, the east coast there, that we're looking for some possibility. The Hurricane Center kind of keeping an eye on it, about a 20% chance that might develop into something. Something a lot more attention grabbing, of course, is the red, and we are going to talk about this large oranger area out here in the Atlantic. That's a little bit more of a long-term feature that we're looking for. But here's kind of what we're looking at. We've talked about this yesterday, how there's a stalled front. There's sort of a low pressure system that's rolling right along. It's non-tropical at the moment, but it just continues to look like things will become favorable for development. And things have really ramped up. We've jumped all the way now to a 70% chance, that's according to the National Hurricane Center, that something tropical could form within this red shaded area. Just a reminder that these formation zones are not an impact area where we would be concerned that it would go or threaten. This is where the formation is expected to take place. And in this case, you know, it's pretty far out into the Atlantic, and where it's headed is also going to be fairly good news for us. So I switched to the Futurecast, and you're going to have to start watching the swirls. And here's kind of where that area of storms is along that frontal boundary. This is our exclusive Fox weather model, and we'll see that we're continuing to get that swirl going. We're continuing to see the possibilities of a weak tropical system. So we're not looking for something that would become too strong. It would be fairly weak overall, and we'll again kind of run that out when we get into Tuesday and Wednesday. We sort of start losing that characteristics. But I would point out that yellow shading that I was looking at to begin with that we're sort of skipped over just a little bit. Notice that we do have that counterclockwise rotation here in some of those wind barbs down there on that Wednesday time frame. Would it be tropical? Would it be enough organized? Would you have the rain and everything that kind of go together? That not sure, and the chances are fairly low, and that's why we're kind of not worried as much about that right now. I'm kind of moving on to this area that, and I guess I forgot to mention that at the beginning, the National Hurricane Center has identified this area as Invest 95L. So when you hear that discussion, that's that area of Invest where it could develop into something tropical. When they give it an Invest labeling like that, they can start running some of these computer models on it. And you'll notice the direction here in the computer models is good news. This system, whether it become tropical or not, is expected to continue to move out and into the Atlantic. The further north it moves, the cooler the waters are, the less likely it can hold its maintain its tropical characteristics, if it even is able to get those. So Invest 95L, that has a 70% chance of becoming something tropical, and really it could happen within the next couple of days. Now let's switch gears and move way out into the Atlantic, and I just kind of want to point out how far we are. You'll notice that this orange shading here is a lot closer to the coast of Africa than it is really anything in the U.S. And so this is where the possible action is coming from. There'll be a tropical wave coming off of the coast. It's not even off of the coast and into the Atlantic yet. It is still on the coast of Africa, making its way towards the Atlantic, and then it'll travel for a couple days and then get to our orange shaded area. And that's why the National Hurricane Center says over the next 2 days, pretty much a 0% chance that anything's going to happen, because it's still, the wave itself is still sitting over land. But when we get into that 3 to 7 day time frame, then we're going to bump that up to about a 40% chance. This kind of activity where we have tropical waves coming off of the African coast, marching across the Atlantic at fairly low latitudes, and then getting into somewhat favorable conditions for development. This is a typical August pattern. This is something that we're used to seeing, and we're seeing that right away. So that's why we're expecting the numbers to increase as far as the activity that we've seen so far. Now, the challenge is still going to be that Saharan dust that's mixed in there with it. What normally happens is this dust begins to sort of fall apart a little bit and become less overall once the further we get into August. So this next wave, as it comes off, this tropical wave comes off the coast, it's going to have to kind of find one of these lighter areas of that dust in order to help its development a little bit. But see, if it can get kind of right out ahead of this next thicker batch of dust, then it'll have a better chance of developing into something. So there's a lot of factors still to kind of put into play here. And you can see there's still some strong dust that is moving off of the coast. And that'll be something that's dealt with for just a little bit. So that dust has really sort of dominated the season so far. In a bigger picture, it's been relatively normal for a hurricane season, but in the last, let's say, 5 to 10 years, we've normally seen more activity by this time of the year. So in a shorter term, it seems like we should be seeing more things. In the bigger picture, we're kind of on track. It's not that big of a deal. And if just a reminder, last year, there were a total of 11 hurricanes. Of course, us here in Houston remember Beryl. That was the first one. But the rest of the hurricanes after Beryl all happened after July, so into August and September. So the peak of the season is still right around the corner. We're expecting that, as the history books tell us, September the 10th is the peak of the season. But notice how the activity really ramps up once we get into August, and a lot of that having to do with what I showed you there as that tropical wave comes off the African coast. If Invest 95L is able to get itself organized enough to get a name, Dexter will be the next name on the list. And no matter what, the next name on the list is Dexter. We've had 3 tropical storms so far. They've been relatively short-lived, and we'll see what happens as we move forward. The National Hurricane Center's expectations are above average season. Colorado State University also expects to see a season that is slightly above average, and this is when we're expecting to see those numbers increase. We will continue to be here every day of hurricane season. I'll be here tomorrow a little bit after 4 p.m. Central Time. I'll look forward to seeing you then.